Hi, I'm Ray Hagar with the Reno Gazette-Journal, and welcome to an all-new edition of Nevada Newsmakers. Today we're going to talk about the history of Las Vegas, from Bugsy Siegel to Steve Wynn.
Journalist John L. Smith has written a book cataloging some of Las Vegas's most famous and infamous characters. Ray?
And coming up on today's Pundit panel, we have Larry Matheis, Robert Uithoven, and Dick Gammick. So let's roll on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
In part by the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the world's largest industrial park, the resort at Red Hawk, and the Peppermill family of casinos.
Corporations moving to the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center require reliable power, fiber optic communication, and clean water sources. And yet, there's another amenity we're very proud of here at TRI, rail service. So far, we've built over 2 miles of railroad track, and another 3.6 is under construction. When companies need to transport freight, we're going to help them move it quickly and efficiently. Welcome to the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the largest industrial park in the world, building economic prosperity for Nevadans.
Something spectacular has taken wing not far from Reno or Lake Tahoe, and never far from your mind. An escape of fine dining and legendary golf. Introducing the resort at Red Hawk. And at the center of it all, we've feathered our nest with new villas that have elevated Red Hawk to the status of a premier resort. The Resort at Red Hawk, a beautiful new arrival in northern Nevada.
As an employer, did you know you can be held liable for negligent hiring? A background screening by Employer Links can uncover criminal records, like alcohol and drug convictions. It can verify the applicant's education, driving records, and professional licenses. Employer Links can check civil records, registered sex offender records, and Social Security fraud. Hiring the right person shouldn't be a gamble. Call Employer Links. Employer Links, protecting your investment.
I tell you, John, this industry has really changed.
Tell me about it.
You seem to do pretty well last year. What's your secret?
No secrets. Although I'll tell you something. The smartest thing I did was sign up with Pro Group Management.
Really? They do workers' comp, right?
Yeah, their services are great. And get this, they saved me 30%. I've heard they saved others 50%.
That works for me.
Pro Group Management. Finally, workers' comp that works for you.
You are watching Nevada Newsmakers.
Hi, welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. Today's guest is John L. Smith, the columnist for the Las Vegas Review-Journal. He's just written a new book, Sharks in the Desert, The Founding Fathers and Current Kings of Las Vegas. Welcome to you, John.
Thanks so much. Thanks for the invitation.
John, you know, on this book, a lot of times you must have heard that, well, Las Vegas was a much better city when the mob ran it. Is that really true?
Well, you know, I think it was probably certainly a much smaller city. It was one of those, it was a place where, you know, like the Cheers bar, when you walked into a casino, people knew your name and were glad you came. I think what Las Vegas has become is a big place, and so some folks who've been around there a long time, who get stuck in traffic for half an hour rather than for the 3 or 4 minutes in the old days, they remember back when they had a little juice in town, and they remember back when things were a little easier to get around and to get along. You know, the demographics of Las Vegas have changed dramatically in recent years. So I personally don't think Las Vegas was a better place then, but I do think it was smaller and a little easier to get your arms around.
John, wasn't it also easier in the past for a guy like Bob Stupek or Ralph Engelstadt to go in and kind of get their foot in the door of the gaming industry and create a multi-million, if not billion-dollar empire?
It sure was. Las Vegas has always been a place, much like Reno, a place where an entrepreneur, a guy on the make, could go and perhaps make a score and perhaps make a real name for himself, and more often than not, probably bust out. But the Las Vegas of even 15 or 20 years ago made it possible for a Bob Stupak to get in the game. Today, unless you're downtown fixing up one of the old careworn casinos downtown, you're really not a player here for less than $500 million. And in reality, you're not on the Strip for less than $1.5 billion now. So yeah, you really are. You have to come in with Wall Street endorsement. There aren't too many folks walking around with $1 billion in their personal bank accounts to go and give Las Vegas business a try.
Well, John, before reading your book, I never realized that the gaming empires built in Las Vegas actually dwarf those of some of the biggest capitalists of American history. We're talking the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, and the Carnegies. Could you explain some of that?
Sure. The point of that is that what we're talking about is really first generation money. The folks like the Carnegies, when they came through and that generation basically built their own money. They were considered the nouveau riche of that generation. Many of the folks who made it big in gambling in Las Vegas really did it in their own generation. A guy like Ralph Engelstad, to me, is a great example of that. A fellow from the Dakotas and from Thief River, Minnesota, originally, but Engelstad came here, built some houses, turned some profit, and basically just bankrolled himself into position to where, when he died a few years back, he was worth well over $1 billion. He's the fellow who, of course, gave $100 million to a university of South Dakota, that's just one example.
Well, he was also well known for his.
Another great example of a guy who came to town as really more of a gambler than anything. He wanted to get some business going, but for his air taxi business, but he was really just a gambler with an interest in Las Vegas of the 40s.
John, Steve Wynn, somebody who didn't have that kind of money, however, through his connections with Valley Bank and Perry Thomas, was able to really change the face of Las Vegas today. Can you tell us a little about that?
Sure. Really, if there is a hero, rather mysterious, but hero nonetheless, if there's a hero in Las Vegas history financially, it's definitely Perry Thomas, the Mormon banker who came and helped create Valley Bank along with others, and who really shepherded Teamsters pension fund money a generation ago in Las Vegas. It was Thomas who was really responsible for ushering in that new era of growth. He encountered in the late 60s a young guy, a cocky young character, who was, again, another fellow on the make, who had come to town recommended by some of his family members and friends, who was looking for an opportunity. Perry Thomas gave it to him. For whatever reason, Perry Thomas took a liking to Steve Wynn and really helped to open the door to his career. Wynn has run with that ball since then, of course, and really outgrew the kind of financing that one bank could give him. Much like others on the Strip, Wynn grew into the junk bond era with his friend Michael Milken of Drexel Burnham, and made great use of that in building the Mirage. So the financial undercurrent of Las Vegas has always been there. In the old days, suitcase money, Bugsy Siegel and Virginia Hill and that crowd. In a generation to come, it was, of course, the Teamsters, very controversial still because of the mob manipulation, and then following that, junk bond money. And now, today, you find them, it's more Deutsche Bank and Morgan Stanley. So, they're definitely, as I like to say, half joking, we're as legitimate as Wall Street.
John, let's stop right there for one moment. When we come back, I want to ask you about the murder and mayhem that made Las Vegas. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
For a videotape copy of any Nevada Newsmakers program, call 775-857-2244. The tapes are $20 each, including shipping.
For more than a decade, the Southern Nevada Water Authority has been helping the community embrace conservation as a way of life. That includes replacing more than 50 million square feet of grass with water-smart landscaping. During the worst drought on record, watering restrictions and tough landscaping codes have reduced the community's water use by billions of gallons, even as thousands of new residents were moving into Nevada. That's smart water management, and that's our promise to Nevada.
Reno's best dining values are all at one casino, the Pepper Mill. You can enjoy great savings on our popular specials. Pepper Mill's coffee shop offers daily lunch specials, low-carb dining, and all your favorite comfort foods. You'll find sensational lunch specials featuring Reno's freshest seafood, sushi, pasta, and more at Oceano. And early bird specials at Reno's Premier Steakhouse and Romanza Ristorante Italiano. The best values are at the Pepper Mill. Where are you dining?
Many of the materials we rely on every day come from the ground, and modern mining technology brings them to us cleaner and safer than ever before. To learn more about America's natural resources, visit nma.org, the National Mining Association.
Island Inkjet is now open on South Meadows Parkway. Island Inkjet will refill your inkjet cartridges in just 1 hour. We have the ink to precisely match over 240 cartridges, saving you up to 60% on the cost of buying a new cartridge. Our work is 100% guaranteed, and contrary to what you may have heard, refills do not void any printer warranties. You don't throw out your car when it runs out of gas. Don't throw out your cartridges. Refill them at Island Inkjet on South Meadows Parkway by Smith's.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers.
Hi, welcome back to Nevada Newsmakers. I'm Ray Hagar. This is Paul Enos, and we're on the phone with John L. Smith, the celebrated columnist with the Las Vegas Review-Journal. We're talking about his new book, Sharks in the Desert, The Founding Fathers and the Current Kings of Las Vegas. John, you chronicle a few murders in your book, and I was wondering, you're talking about Bugsy Siegel, then you talk about the 1977 murder of culinary boss Al Bramlett. Is there a murder or two murders in the history of Las Vegas that really helped shape that community?
You really have to divide it into eras. I think the early era, when it was pretty well known that murders would be in Las Vegas so as not to embarrass and draw heat to Las Vegas, that mob murders were done out of town. Thus, Siegel was killed in Beverly Hills. Gus Greenbaum was killed outside of Phoenix. Johnny Roselli was murdered and dumped in the bay off of Miami. So you have a different era there. I'm probably more fascinated with the John Roselli murder. My friend Ed Becker and Charlie Rapley wrote a great book a number of years back called All American Mafioso about Johnny Roselli. But really, more in the present, I think the one that's drawn the most attention, and again, it's a murder that occurred out of town, but that murder was, of course, of Tony Spilotro and his brother Michael in 1986. It's just now coming to light some new details in the Spilotro case that finds where at least one witness is now saying that these fellows were dispatched by their Chicago mob bosses away from that cornfield where they were found in Indiana. So I think that's one of those that's fascinating to me. And there are certainly others. The one of the mysteries, of course, is the Ted Binion murder, non-murder, with his girlfriend Sandy Murphy and Rick Tabish. That was the one that grabbed the most headlines recently.
John, you chronicle in your book some of the early history of Las Vegas and then how it has effect on today. You look at the Fertittas, and they were somebody who had, kind of some mob ties or reputed mob ties back in the early days, but they've shed that image. Can you go into detail on how a family is able to do that?
Yeah, I really characterize the Fertittas as really the new, kind of the quintessential new Las Vegas family. Frank Fertitta, the elder, came to town from Galveston as a guy from really the old school. To say he was strictly mobbed up would be to say that it would be like saying everyone else was too. You really didn't come to Las Vegas in the early 60s if you weren't coming from an illegal crap game somewhere. So what he did, and it's fascinating to me, he really is a survivor, kind of a classic Vegas survivor. Was on the periphery of a couple of the major investigations into hidden ownership and things like that. Managed to survive that, which is really phenomenal. And then once that Bingo Palace, which became Palace Station, once Bingo Palace was under his control, he really did great things with it. I mean, they changed entertainment policies and food policies, so there wasn't any mystery to how he was successful once he was in control. This man knew what the heck he was doing, and then he's kind of passed that along to the family. I think the family's fascinating because they're basically pretty private people, even though they've got their own reality show. They're basically pretty private folks, and they've turned that business into multi-billion-dollar status in terms of their corporate power, and they're starting to spread out politically. The Fertittas are now big time political donors, not only locally but nationally.
John, let's get on something that's related to your book, not on your book. A couple of years ago, Mayor Oscar Goodman floated the idea of having a mob museum in Las Vegas. When he floated the idea, it wasn't received very well. Why doesn't Las Vegas embrace its past?
Well, that's a really good question. Las Vegas has got a fair amount of hypocrisy floating, because what you have is you've got people who are image makers in the casino industry, and the hired guns like Vasiliadis at R&R and some of the others, and they're very good at what they do. But the fact is they are remaking Las Vegas every year or two. They don't want the folks to think of Las Vegas in that old way. I think a lot of the older operators are uncomfortable with it because, frankly, they lived through that era. And they probably brushed a little on the close side. Certainly they did, to a lot of the folks who are notorious. So I think they're uncomfortable with the image. What they fail to appreciate is that the public is absolutely fascinated still with that image. Not all of the public, certainly, but there's an element of the public that's still fascinated with that part of Las Vegas history.
Okay, John, we got to cut it off right there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And the book, again, is Sharks in the Desert, the Founding Fathers and Current Kings of Las Vegas. Very good read. John L. Smith, thanks for being here today. We'll be right back after this with our pundit panel.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
Welcome to the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, just 10 minutes east of Sparks. We're proud that Walmart and other Fortune 500 companies have chosen Tahoe Reno Industrial Center to relocate their businesses. We have sites from under 5 acres to well over 500 acres, and with all of the amenities that every successful corporation requires. Welcome to the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the largest industrial park in the world, and we're building economic prosperity for Nevadans.
The Nevada Beer Wholesalers encourages the responsible consumption of beer. The Nevada Beer Wholesalers Association are sponsors and participants in many community-based efforts such as school education programs, safe ride home, recycling programs, alcohol-free after-prom and graduation parties, safe voting campaigns, and designated driver programs. They are family-owned businesses employing 2,000 Nevadans. They also collect and pay the state excise tax. The Nevada Beer Wholesalers Association, delivering more than just beer.
My family started this business 27 years ago.
We work hard to serve our customers and our community.
But it's getting harder and harder to keep the doors open.
For example, our workers' comp is going through the roof. Isn't anyone on my side anymore?
The Retail Association of Nevada is. If you're a small business owner, we can cut your workers' comp by up to 50%, lobby for your interests, and keep you informed. Put us to work today.
Something spectacular has taken wing not far from Reno or Lake Tahoe, and never far from your mind. An escape of fine dining and legendary golf. Introducing the resort at Red Hawk. And at the center of it all, we've feathered our nest with new villas that have elevated Red Hawk to the status of a premier resort. The Resort at Red Hawk, a beautiful new arrival in northern Nevada.
You are watching Nevada Newsmakers.
Hey, welcome back to the Pundit panel. Joining Paul and I today are first Robert Uithoven, the campaign manager for Jim Gibbons for governor, and Larry Matheis, the executive director of Nevada State Medical Association, and Paul Enos, of course, is with the Nevada Motor Transport Association. Paul, why don't you start here?
Okay, today we had kind of some news come up that John Ensign might have a potential opponent in the form of Jimmy Carter's eldest son, Jack. Larry, can you tell us if you think he's got a shot?
A shot at what?
Being a carpetbagger winner.
No, I think that Senator Ensign is one of the most popular figures in the state, and I don't think that this is something that I'm sure he will take it as if it's serious, because I think every election you have to approach it that way. But I'd be very surprised if Nevadans aren't generally pleased with John Ensign's performance.
I agree. He has a great campaign team. I think he's on the right side on the issues for the state, and John Ensign will win that race.
Well, and it's kind of interesting.
It'll kick his campaign into gear, of course.
You're kind of running the same race, having somebody from Georgia, that you would be running against. So.
Yeah, but yes. You can hardly call Dina Titus a carpetbagger because she's been here a long time. Now, Jack
Absolutely.
Carter, he's only been here 3 years. But one thing that Mr. Carter points out is that a lot of Nevada voters have moved here in the last 3 years, so maybe people won't think of him so much as an outsider.
I don't think that's the issue. I mean, I think in every election where there is an incumbent, the election is really about the incumbent. It's a ratification either that the voters are satisfied with the way the incumbent has done their job, or that they're dissatisfied. When they're dissatisfied, if there is in the opposition someone that is credible, then you have a race. So I think incumbency is always what elections are about, which is why the constitutional offices are so interesting in next year, because there won't be an incumbent for any of them, and when you have that many races, there's a lot of judgments that people will have to be making, the voters will have to be making, about a lot of candidates who were successful previously in other offices, and now they have to evaluate them based on what office they're now seeking.
Well, in the next week or two, there will be federal reports to show the fundraising, and I know John Ensign's been working very hard at that, so he'll have a substantial amount of money, and we'll see if Jack Carter is willing to invest the kind of money, and if there's people across the state. I mean, you just had this interview with John Smith on the gaming industry and the political power they have in the state. They are not going to leave John Ensign's camp, I don't believe.
Robert, do you think the Democrats are desperate because they seem to be looking for these big star names? They want Andrew Agassi to run against John Porter. Now they're getting the son of a president to run against John Ensign. Do you think that kind of smacks of some desperation?
Well, I don't think they have that deep of a farm team. Republican candidates in Nevada, I think we have a good system in the Republican Party of grooming candidates through local races to the state assembly. Take Jim Gibbons, for instance, who served in the state legislature, 10 years in Congress, and now making a move for the governor's mansion, a second move. And I think we do a really good job of coaching candidates, and I think we're right on the issues on the issues of the day, whether it's education, transportation, health care, Medicaid. It's having good candidates who can go out and articulate ideas, and I think we do a better job at that.
But I do think also that the Democrats are facing what the Republicans faced for several generations. When an era develops politically, we're in a Republican era right now. The agenda is primarily set by Republicans at all levels. And Democrats have the problem of formulating a strategy that works to counter that. You try just straight opposition. We're better than them. That may work in individual cases. Usually fails. You try to differentiate yourself, but if you differentiate too much, the themes of an era, most people buy into them, and so you find that you get more and more marginalized. I think the Democrats just have the problem of what are they, who are they, what is it that they offer as their ideas. They're in exactly the same position the Republicans were in and were unable to come up with a plausible alternative to the Democratic hegemony that came out of the New Deal, World War II, and the 50s. And so they're in a scramble phase. They can win elections, but they can't set the agenda.
Are we in kind of a contract of America era now? Because that's really when it started to change for the Republicans.
I think we are in an era that in which conservative values, business issues of economics dominate, and the Republicans have a coherent system of explaining how to govern on those issues. And the Democrats are trying to work on those. But those aren't their strong issues. Their strong issues tend to be ones that come with growth, that tend to be about how individuals and families deal with challenges of growth, education, health care. So, and those are not the topics of the day. So it's, I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing it play out in small races and in large races around the country.
There'll be a lot of national money that gets put into this race, I think. I mean, we've seen Emily's List go out and support Dina Titus. I think there'll be some other special interest groups from Washington that try to weigh in, pour some money into Nevada for local races. The problem is they pour national interest money into the state, along comes a baggage of what those national interests have been. You know, George Soros or Howard Dean, money coming into Nevada, I don't think sits well for Democrats in some of the bigger races with John Ensign or governors.
Okay, although Dina Titus is more articulate on trying to frame a set of issues than most, and I think that could make it a very interesting race.
Okay, we got to stop it right there, gentlemen. Good job today.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Nevada Newsmakers today. We'll be right back after this.
Nevada Newsmakers, brought to you in part by the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the world's largest industrial park, the resort at Red Hawk, and the Peppermill family of casinos.
South Reno's hotspot for food, fun, and friends is the Tamarack Junction. Play over 480 of the hottest slots and video poker games. Enjoy hot times and sizzling food specials at Sully's Sports Bar, Grill, and Nightclub. Watch your favorite game on one of our jumbo high-definition plasma TVs. Enjoy great food 24 hours a day in the Dining Car Restaurant. Or sample the best hot and cold sandwiches in the Whistle Stop Deli. The Tamarack Junction is your junction for fun. South Virginia and Amati Ranch Parkway. Yeah.
Island Inkjet is now open on South Meadows Parkway. Island Inkjet will refill your inkjet cartridges in just 1 hour. We have the ink to precisely match over 240 cartridges, saving you up to 60% on the cost of buying a new cartridge. Our work is 100% guaranteed, and contrary to what you may have heard, refills do not void any printer warranties. You don't throw out your car when it runs out of gas. Don't throw out your cartridges. Refill them at Island Inkjet on South Meadows Parkway by Smith's.
Ray, what do we have going on tomorrow?
Well, Paul, tomorrow we're going to talk about the state of journalism at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. You don't want to miss this. Thank you.
Thank you.